This is Mike Diercksen from Proactive, and you're listening to the Building Bite podcast. Tune in as we spotlight our guests, Hyder Naqvi, CEO, and Matthew Bogobowicz, Product Manager at Injala. Our episode today is focused on solving network organization, advancing beyond Excel spreadsheets. For more information on this episode and others, please check out the Building Bite at www.buildwithproactive.com.
Welcome to the Building Bite podcast, a podcast for construction contractors, owners, and insurance professionals, where you'll hear from the experts about key topics to help you be successful. I'm Chris Epps, a Vice President with Proactive, and I'm joined here with my co-host, Mike Diercksen, our Manager of Marketing and Business Development. Our guests today are looking to reshape the risk management landscape, and we're thrilled to welcome Hyder Naqvi, CEO at Injala, and Matthew Bogobowicz, Product Manager at Injala. Hyder, Matthew, how are you gentlemen this afternoon?
Doing great. How about you?
Fantastic.
Doing great. Looking forward to diving in here. Mike, how about yourself? How are you today?
Doing good, Chris. Really excited to talk to Hyder and Matt. And we had a great conversation at a conference just recently, so really excited to dive in.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited as well after seeing a product demo here. So before we jump into our main topic, maybe you gentlemen could share a little bit about each of your backgrounds and who you are and your journey into your current role at Injala. Matthew, maybe we could start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started out with getting a degree in risk management. And the first company I worked for, I actually also did an internship with, and it's Morris Insurance Services and Consulting. And there I worked on a lot of surplus lines tax filing, some bulletins, keeping our clients in the know as far as compliance goes for insurance. But following that, I worked at Amwins, which I'm sure many of the viewers are going to know is one of the largest wholesale brokerages out there. I worked in a division there where there's a lot of specialty program underwriting. So we basically get the authority to give our clients insurance without reaching out to our carriers. And after that is when I moved over here to Injala as a product manager. And I've been working over here to help implement some of that next gen technology for risk management.
All right, fantastic. Hyder, how about yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I actually have a unique background. I grew up in insurance. My dad actually used to own an insurance agency. So this is back in the late 90s. I remember sort of going to my dad's office after school, and it was a combination of fax machine and typewriter and phones, and of course your legacy-based filing cabinets. And so that's for the ones that have been in this industry long enough. They know that this was the actual insurance office back then. And I grew up in that, and that was something that I wasn't really focused in. I found my calling was in engineering and technology. So I went down a great journey, engineering products and being able to work on some web-based technology in the early 2000s. And, as I sort of looked back and looked at ways where I can have the biggest impact, I found my calling in the insurance space because I think, as you guys would agree, that's an area that had been, and to a certain degree, still currently is, very sort of a late laggard industry and hasn't really adopted to a lot of the latest technologies. So, where people found a lot of chaos, I found opportunity. And that's where I sort of focused on areas where I saw, small things that I can do that had the biggest difference. And went on and ended up starting this company in Injala, and it's been a great journey so far.
Love that. And Hyder, you might be in the 1% of the 1% of someone who grew up in insurance, right? The common thing is like, oh, we all fell into insurance, right? Like I don't know how I got here, but everyone kind of like, oh, well, one way or another, I was in construction, now I'm in insurance. But you actually grew up in that, so that's excellent. Well, and diving into our main topic for today, the title of our episode is Solving Network Organization, Advancing Beyond Excel Spreadsheets. So guys, look, I love the title, but it's a little bit of a love-hate because I am a sucker for a good spreadsheet. When you get those things going, it's always good, but I'm a huge fan of the message you guys are delivering and the work you're doing here. So can you walk our listeners through kind of how you address this issue?
Yeah, listen, I think, and I'll just kind of talk a little bit about my journey into this and then talk about how that's manifested into some of the things that we're doing today. When I started really taking a look at the industry, there was technology and there still is technology, but most technology is sort of point of entry, single point of entry type systems where you sort of put what data that you have, and it's sort of the old saying, which is garbage in, garbage out. People are just entering data, they print off reports, and it's very structured where it's supposed to follow a specific pattern, how you enter data and what you find. And I think people who've been in this industry long enough can relate to is that there's a lot of workarounds that individuals either did before or they still currently do. And that ends up becoming or manifests itself into Excel spreadsheets. And you have a combination of systems and Excel spreadsheets. And as I started looking at how I get engaged in the insurance space, I was being able to kind of think beyond spreadsheets. And so the way we look at it is, how do we simplify insurance? How do we make it easy? How do we make it more structured, make it accessible, transparent? And it doesn't come with having things on an Excel spreadsheet. So the goal that we set out to do is our goal was to be able to say, okay, how do we make it easy, accessible, transparent? How do we build trust? And how do we make processes frictionless? And although the Excel spreadsheets are a good sort of ad hoc, quick way of being able to accomplish things, which I think they're still the king. I don't think they're going to go away anytime soon. But there are certain processes that have been repetitive enough where you can standardize in some level of technology. And so that's where really we sort of came in and we started working on a platform that helps harmonize a lot of the data that sits in individual computers into creating what we call a network orchestration, where you have multiple parties that are inside of a single value chain. So from owners or companies that want risk managed to maybe working with their brokers and then working with the insurance companies and then other organizations that are part of that value chain. How do they connect together in a single place, exchange key information, and solve some of the biggest problems, and to be able to build trust, create transparency, and remove friction? And that's what's really transpired with the organization, and that's what we've done with Injala.
And definitely interesting, Hyder. I think, one way we sort of connect with our audience and find an easy way for them to sort of understand issues like this is by providing a real life example or sort of a case study. So maybe I'd ask Matthew, I don't know, Matthew, do you have an example of something like that where you can tell us, where your platform really took one of these problems for one of these stakeholders and was able to kind of streamline that flow of information for everybody and sort of bring it all together?
Yeah, well, so Hyder's mentioned that, we have utilized a platform-based model for all of our solutions, which encompasses a complete suite of insurance and risk management technology offerings. But one product that we have that comes to mind is a Certify. And that has to do with the insurance verification process, which a lot of people know as certificate tracking. And that's truly a fragmented and broken process. There's a long chain of communication that happens between the trade partner all the way to the carriers. And oftentimes there's more than 5 parties involved. And so the game of telephone occurs, which is no fun for anybody. So what ends up happening is that there's this long drawn out process to obtain insurance compliance for a given contract. And too many times that I can count, I've seen agents reach out to carriers and they ask for different types of coverages before or after that contract has already started. And so there's this whole formula for disaster where there's a lot of miscommunication, a lot of non-compliance, and most importantly, a false sense of risk being transferred. So what I've seen with clients in our Certify platform is that we're connecting that whole chain of parties together all in one place and offer the ability with our AI to read a plethora of types of insurance documentation. And we pair this with automated emails so that the result is a very clear instant communication between all parties. And this has cut down on a lot of the time and related to insurance verification. And it's also created a lot more of authenticity related to that documentation. So I've seen clients come in, have very low risk compliance levels with their trade partners. And as a result, from using the system, not only can they take on more business, but they really get to increase the amount of authenticity in the documents and ensure that there's that falsehood is taken care of.
Yeah, no, it's so important to have good streamlined communication. It's just make sure everyone's pulling in the same direction, right? Because I feel like there's a lot of things that fall through the cracks when you don't have that. And it's important for the stakeholders to be able to move forward quickly and confidently. So it kind of brings me to an issue we had touched on last we spoke, and something that Injala is looking to tackle. So COI and generating that certainty in the marketplace. Hyder, I think when we last spoke, you had mentioned a recent report showing as much as 90% of reviewed certificates of insurance actually have materially incorrect data. So, I mean, that's a staggering number. How do you guys propose kind of moving through that and getting beyond that in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, that's an alarming stat, but so 90% on an average, certificates contain some level of misrepresentation. But then I think the bigger stat here is that if you take a look at that exact document, which is the Accord 25, it literally says on there that this document is for informational purposes only. And there's numerous court cases where these sponsors or certificate holders or additional insureds have held on to these certificates as a false sense of security that they have subcontractors that have proper insurance coverages, but then turned out when time of a claim, they didn't actually have the insurance policy and there was some level of misrepresentation. And when taken to court, they realized that it doesn't really withstand judicial review. So then the question becomes like, there's processes that people are following, but it's like, well, why are we doing that in the first place? And so this particular point with COIs, and if you go and look for technology, if you say in Google software for certificate of insurance, there's a sea of technology products out there. And it's like what I like to call every technology that I generally see out there, it's like a better mousetrap. But the outcome that people should be focusing on is not a better mousetrap, but to be able to eliminate mice. And that really comes from being able to get to the core details and looking at the policies, looking at the endorsements. And really up till this point, technologies just wasn't in the place where you can do a lot of that because it did require a lot of human capital and human intervention to look through things, to use technology as just sort of like I call the digital diary, like making checkboxes to say, yes, as a human, I've reviewed this information and I'm just going to click on this checkbox indicating that this person or the contractor is compliant. And I think we're sort of moving into this new era, this new phase where, with the advent of AI, the artificial intelligence can actually help do that work for you to be able to review policies and review documents. And again, not just COIs, but actual policies. So any given policy, can artificial intelligence actually read through the fine details and not only looking at factual information, but reading between the lines. And there's a lot of legal language that goes far beyond any risk manager to be able to take a look at, even within 10 to 20 minutes, to be able to get through all the core details, where the AI can do it very fast. And I think that's what people should be thinking about and employing, which is, if the true intent is risk transfer, then you should be looking at technologies that can help you do that. And I think with AI, that's one of the things that we've been tackling, is making that work more efficient. The other thing is, again, the COI misrepresentation. The question is, where's this information coming from? Where's the origination of this data? And a lot of times it's the agent that's providing the details. And if you take a look at, I say follow the money, right? So, a contractor or a tenant who's providing the insurance information to whoever's requesting it, they just want to get this process over with, right? So they can care less if the check boxes truly mean what they mean. They just want to get past whoever's requesting the details with a green thumbs up so they can move forward and do their work or continue on with their business. And for the agent, they're not going to get paid any extra for getting the perfect certificate, right? So what they're doing is they're just, again, trying to get past this request. Now, I'm not advocating for all agents fraudulently filling out information. It could be a case of fat fingering certain information and it's misrepresented. But nonetheless, the documents contain misrepresentation. So if we're tracing the money, there's no added incentive for the insured or the the contractor or vendor in our situation, or the agent to provide the best information. So it's really incumbent upon the requester who's getting the details to make sure they're getting the right information. So for us, we talked about artificial intelligence. Second thing is what we call network orchestration, which is, can we have some sort of digital chain of custody? Like, where's the data coming from? Can we tie it back to a specific user? So is that user, number one, authenticated? So if I'm John Smith working for ABC Insurance Agency, I'm the registered agent for this insured, can we validate that? And if we can, now we have some sort of traceability. And it's not just a PDF document that sits in the mind box. So like Mike, I think one of the things that I came across the other day is, I was watching this YouTube video, and I'm sure you guys have probably known this, is that you can use your iPhone to take a picture of a signature, okay, and apply that signature on any document and send it out. So I can take a picture of, let's say, a signature for Elon Musk and paste it on any document and send it out. And now, you begin to question the recipient of that document, like, how authentic is the signature, and are you taking it at face value, or is there actual digital signatures or credibility to this information? So some of these big companies like Dropbox of the world, the DocuSigns, they've are working to solve some of these problems. But again, those are a lot more broad in perspective and aren't really narrowed in and focusing in on the insurance space. And so for us, that's one of the key areas that we're targeting is, number one, can AI help with reviewing these vast documents with a lot of legal language and help make it easy to interpret information? Number two, some sort of digital traceability or chain of custody of where that information came from, and you're not questioning the authenticity of that information. So I know I gave you a long-winded response, but those are some of the things that we're doing. And there's, I'm talking about ourselves, but there's a lot of companies in the insurtech space that are in a way or another working to tackle some of these situations. And these are some of the things when I talk to individuals in this space, is to be able to, not just do what has been part of your process, is to question some of the information that you're seeing to make sure, are you really solving the problems that you're supposed to be solving? Or is it just sort of following a process that at the end of the day is not giving you the desired outcome that you're seeking? So, anyways, that's my 2 cents on the question that you asked. I don't know if you have any follow-ups to that.
No, it's amazing with the cell phones these days, what you can do. Well, I can't really see it, but with the cell phones, I mean, they said that the Apollo 13 mission had less technology going to the moon than what you currently have in your iPhone, and just goes to show you how powerful those tools are. But you got to make sure we're using the other tools we have to make sure people aren't abusing that, right? So definitely a great insight there as well.
Yeah.
And any tool that sort of brings clarity and accuracy around that documentation, as well as, Hyder, like you talked about, speed and efficiency on top of that, making that even better. Matthew, I would ask, maybe from a technology perspective, where do you see stakeholders struggling the most with that sort of tech adoption in that space?
Well, look, it's no secret that the insurance industry has been slow to adapting tech. And companies have built their own procedures that have lasted for a very long time, not utilizing next-gen technology. And as a result, it requires a lot of manpower to do the job. And what I see is that an industry like insurance is initially hesitant to let go of the way that they do things and try something new. And truthfully, that's really natural. But there's this huge increase in demand for talent in the risk management space. Just to kind of give you an idea, at the end of the 2010s, 1 in 4 insurance agents, were retiring. Over the next couple of years, there's going to be 400,000 more risk management professionals retiring. And on the other side of it, when it comes to young talent, we talk about millennials, where 80% of them have a limited understanding of risk management and employment opportunities in the space. So because of this talent crisis, although insurance companies are initially hesitant or have a hard time adapting technology, they know that they need to switch this next gen stuff that's out there. And they need to do so, especially for an industry that requires clarity and quality control in the work that they do every single day. So as a result, I would say that it's a necessity for companies to change over to technology. They know that's the case. And as time passes on, that adoption becomes less and less of an issue. So we see lower and lower rates of struggle when it comes to insurance technology adoption.
Sounds like getting out of that mindset of if it ain't broke, don't fix it, as opposed to looking for a better tool to make that business better, as you said, Hyder, to not make the better mousetrap, but figure out how to get rid of the mice altogether is the key goal there.
Yeah, and listen, I think if we just sort of look back, one thing, and I'm sure the people that are listening to this, and Michael, Chris, I think you guys would agree that, I think some of the technology that's been in this space hasn't really been that inspiring to begin with. And, it's like the SOP for new employees coming into risk management, it's like a big document that teaches you how to use a technology. And it's most technology that I've seen, it's like old clunkers. It's like you got to go through all these hoops and steps to be able to perform one single action. And I think where things are really headed, especially with this trying to get each employee to be a lot more efficient with this big vacuum that Matthew just talked about, is technology needs to be a lot more user friendly. That user experience just hasn't really been that great. And so I think most millennials, and I'm actually part of the millennial group, just made it by borderline, like the expectation, like we grew up on Facebook and sort of the AOLs of the world, and the user experience, nobody read a user's manual. You just sign up, you start using technology. The iPhones, when was the last time you actually opened up a user's manual to use it? You just play around with it and you learn it. Whereas I think up till this point, it's been really difficult to use the technology in this space. And, some of the companies that I've seen that are coming out, including our company, there's a added emphasis and a major emphasis on the user experience itself, making it inspiring, making it very simple and easy. And to add that extra cherry on the top, can we gamify some of this to make it a little bit more, make it fun for people to be able to go through some of these, use the technology to be able to make it simple and easy, but have fun doing it. So, so anyways, that's a little bit to add to what Matthew was saying, which is there is a big void that's being created, and I think it could be supplemented by not only intelligent technology, but technology that actually is inspiring and easy to use.
Yeah, I think just having this conversation with a friend, TV is kind of an analogy for this, right? There used to be a time where getting a big screen TV was the end all be all, but technology has moved so quickly now that it's not prohibitively expensive to go buy a 70-inch TV. Now the quality may not be what you want, but it used to be, hey, the bigger it is, the better it is. And I just think that technology advances so quickly that by the time you get comfortable with something, it's almost, we've got two iterations beyond that, right? And you have to keep going, because otherwise you run into an issue where, hey, I'm not using this efficiently anymore. These systems don't talk to each other. So it's like you said, Hyder, trying to build that comfortability that you can advance it and kind of continuously update, but not just throw people off and go, well, now I don't know what's happening at all, right? The updates have to be integrated in such a way that it still makes sense. It's still easy for someone to pick up like an iPhone and go, okay, I know what I'm doing here. So it's definitely a challenge, but I think it's a fun challenge. So speaking of that, what would you say makes you guys the most excited about the work you're doing right now? Was there like an aha moment for you guys with this? I mean, it's just, you seem to be innovating and kind of finding those streamlined processes, but what makes you most excited about that?
Well, before I answer that question, let me just add to the point that you just made about the TV. It's like, I think you're right. I think it used to be, how do I get the biggest TV, for example? But I think where things have gone to today is like the advent of the ecosystem, right? So people that are especially on, the Macs, they'll get the Mac computer with the headphones and because it's like the cross interoperability between these technologies, or if you're the Google guy, you'll get things with Android and things like that. And although I think in the past there were so many different brands, the brands that actually ended up taking the crown are the ones that figured out how to be able to bring a whole bunch of different things together and make it very simple and easy. And I think the ecosystem part, like, the companies that were sort of one-trick ponies, ended up kind of fading away, and sort of sun kind of set it on them. And the companies that have multiple different ways of being able to help solve problems. And it doesn't have to be that they have to have their own products, but there's some level of integration and cross interoperability, and you're not keying in data multiple times, but if you've keyed it in once and it just kind of adapts in all other things that you're using, I think that's the key. And again, like there's a lot of technologies out there that are doing that. I think ours is one of the best ones, of course, but I think that's really what's going to end up really taking the cake here is being able to make that, the transparency between systems and to be able to get data and creating an ecosystem. So now to answer your question about the aha moment, listen, I think at the end of the day, the most important thing for me is actually solving the key problems and seeing the smiles on our clients' faces when they see the value. And I think a lot of times we've got a great team of engineers and a great team of insurance professionals that have worked tremendously hard putting together solutions for risk managers and for insurance professionals and individuals that just manage risk as part of their work. And for us, nothing gives us most happiness than to see the technologies that we've created actually bringing value to our clients. And that's really the biggest takeaway for us is to be able to see the actual value that it brings not only to individual companies, but numerous companies that are involved in the value chain, some value that it brings. So yeah, that's really the aha moment for us.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback off of what Hyder talked about, that that operability and communication between systems, I can tell you that in my prior life, I probably had a dozen logins and they all spit out different reports, but they all were about information that were similar. And you end up
I think we can all relate to that, right?
Yeah, you end up spending half your time at work, half the month, putting reports together on work that you actually should be focusing on. So that's one thing. That was one big aha moment for me to fix. But the other big one was artificial intelligence. And it's kind of touched on earlier, but it's about how you implement the artificial intelligence in the space. And what I see is happening in the industry is that this AI is helping to break down and read intent, insurance information. And that's a lengthy process to do. I remember starting here at Injala and working through what's our sandbox site, which is our test environment. And I just kept thinking to myself when I was in that test environment, wow, I wish I really had this tool in my old job. I could have sold so much more. I could have focused on so much more other things other than just breaking down and reading intent. So those were the two big aha moments for me.
And that sort of, I think, puts a nice bow on things. One thing we like to do as part of our podcast is we like to leave our audience with 3 key takeaways in each episode. And given sort of what we talked about today and where you guys are trying to drive the industry, what would you say those 3 things are from your perspective?
Well, the first I would say would be having a formal risk management process in place. And this is for the end client, the companies that are actually managing risk for their organizations. And this seems like a given, but I've talked to a lot of companies where they don't have a formal process. And so having that is very important, and it doesn't have to be expensive. You don't need your own risk manager if you're small enough, and if you're large enough, like being able to partner with companies like ours or your brokers, they can help put this together for you because we do this day in and day out, and we have a lot of standardization and processes that can help make it easy for you. So having that formal process, vital. And this is often overlooked because it doesn't add to companies' top line, but it definitely does and can add to your bottom line by avoiding paying out costly claims. And there's a statistic out there where companies, there's a certain percentage, although less than 10%, have gone bankrupt because they haven't properly managed their risk with their subcontractors. So having that risk management process, I think, is the number one thing. The second I would say is what I would say is like being driven by outcomes. I speak to a lot of individuals where they will follow a specific process, and it's a process that was incorporated into the organization. Maybe it was a decade ago, maybe some old risk manager came in, or maybe it was themselves, maybe 10 years ago or 20 years ago where things were. They just created this, step-by-step process And what it's become over time is just check boxes on a piece of paper or PDF document versus looking at what you're actually doing. Like in the case of risk transfer, is it truly giving you the risk transfer? And it's like first principle thinking, asking the why, like, why do I check for this information? And is it giving me the proper level of authentication, or if it's the risk transfer, is it giving me that or not? And if that outcome is not there, being able to reevaluate that, questioning the processes and figuring out how to be able to make sure that beyond the process, you're focused on the outcome that you're looking to achieve. And then finally, I would say, what I think these 2 points lend themselves into, which is incorporating technology. And like I've said in this podcast a little bit earlier, which is instead of, looking at technology that are sort of digital diaries, looking for a little bit more integrated technology. And if you're already using some technology, talk to your vendors, talk to those technology partners, push them to the limits, ask them the questions. And like artificial intelligence is, I think, one of the key driving factors over the next 3 to 5 years. And if your technology partner is not incorporating AI into the work that they're doing, then I think it's really important for you to be able to reevaluate where you are. And I think there's a common saying out there, which I'm sure you guys have heard of, which is, AI is not going to take away your job. It's the people that know how to use AI that are going to eventually take away your job. So what I would say is, and at the end of the day, it's nothing to shy away from. The goal with the AI, and I think the best places AI is incorporated, is finding those small little areas where it adds value as a co-pilot or somebody that can use AI to help make things a little bit easier, more efficient, but more importantly, helping you drive towards the outcome that you're seeking. So just to summarize, a good risk management process, I think being able to focus on the outcomes versus just the process. And finally, being able to incorporate technology, artificial intelligence, I think is going to be key. So being able to figure out how that's going to set you up for success over the next, as we sort of move into this next era of where technology is going to be in the future.
Yeah, those are excellent takeaways, Hyder. And what about an action item, right? So if I'm a stakeholder, if I'm listening to this podcast today and it's making a lot of sense to me, right? But I'm going, where do I start, right? What's that first step? What do you guys think that should be for them?
Well, I think it's really simple. Just take a step back, evaluate those workflows you have and the pain points that you're facing, and reach out to technology experts like us to see if we could help alleviate those issues. That AI is supposed to help, like Hyder said, become a co-pilot in these processes. So I would take that as an action item.
Absolutely. The chat GPTs, the AIs, all those great tools, they're out there. You got to find the people to help you maximize them, right? So, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a great conversation with you. And, as you may have heard, this is a Building Byte podcast. That's building insurance technology with the experts, and you are today's experts. Now, I know you both are located down in Texas. We like to ask everyone, what are you taking a bite out of today? Where's the greasy spoon? Where's the best place to go grab a bite in Texas?
There's some great barbecue down in the Fort Worth stockyards, but what I will say is I'm a Chinese food guy. You can't put a price on crab cheese wontons. So there's a lot of that around here as well.
That's awesome. That's a curveball. I like that. All right, I wasn't expecting that, Matt. What about you, Hyder?
Well, there's a place out here called Subs and Stuff. It's actually a sandwich shop. They have some very unique sauces that they've incorporated into their food. So anybody that's ever down in Irving, it's definitely a place that you should check out. Subs and Stuff.
I love it.
And they
Leave it to
didn't
the
pay me to
technology
say
guys,
this.
break down barriers and break down norms and go away from the barbecue in Texas. So we got subs and Chinese food. I love it.
Well, fantastic. Thank you guys both again for chatting with us today. If our listeners want to hook up with you after the podcast episode airs, where can they find you? Matthew, I'll start with you.
Yeah, LinkedIn's a great place. I'm always very active on LinkedIn, so you can find me on there. But we also go to a lot of industry events, so you'll probably find me at an ERMI event or AGC, something along those lines.
Yeah, same here. And at the end of the day, if you go to Injala.com, I think what you'll find is both me and Matthew's profiles and our contact information. So you can definitely keep in touch with us there. But we have our Twitter and LinkedIn. So like Matthew said, those are good places for you to be able to follow us.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys again. Definitely appreciate the time. Forward to seeing you guys out on the road. I'm sure Mike and I will bump into you guys at a conference somewhere down the road. But thanks again for your time, and thanks again for speaking with us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for listening to The Building Bite. This podcast has been brought to you by Proactive. Check us out on thebuildingbite.com, where you can subscribe to our newsletter and follow us on social media for all future The Building Bite news and updates. You can also find us on your favorite apps, including Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and Amazon. If you have ideas for episode topics that we should cover on the show, or you know somebody who would be a perfect guest, let us know at connect@thebuildingbite.com.